Hello, I will give a short introduction to the brails. So all of our brails are doubled and they're numbered from 1 through 5, top to bottom. So this single line that you see here is actually our tipping line. It's not a braille, and that's what the cleat here furthest on port is. These two smaller lines are both braille 1, port and starboard sides. These are both braille 2 coming to this cleat. Then we have a slightly larger line for braille 3 and for braille 4 right here, and then for braille 5. So once again, that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When we're getting ready to set sail, first you take the coil off, and you can lay that down on deck. Obviously this one's short, so I don't have to worry too much about it tying itself in knots as it pays out. And if we know that we're very close to actually setting, I want to take turns off to the point where I can still hold it and the sail's not starting to pull out on its own, but to where it will be quick and easy to ease when it is time to ease, when the command comes from the captain, ease away brails, haul away main sheet. A good way to check before taking turns off a cleat if there's strain is to just reach up above and see how taut the line is. So there's not a ton of strain on these upper brails, there's not a lot of sail up there, but there is quite a bit of strain on brails 4 and 5 way back here, especially braille 5 since it has the main sheet directly connected to it in the opposite direction. So again, we're getting ready to set sail. We're taking off turns to where it has just one full turn on the cleat, and then we're easing when the command comes, and then easing like this, and then completely easing so that there's plenty of slack in the brails as the sail's being set. I'll show you how to put it back on the cleat if we were striking sail, pulling it back in. You want to make sure that you pull individually and check that both sides are as tight as they can be, and come around the underside of the cleat first. This is one turn. 2 turns, and this is 3 turns. It looks like a lot more than that just because the line is doubled. Coiling is done clockwise, and to coil and hang, you coil about this far away from the cleat, you reach through, and you pull a little bite of line, a little section of line up, and hook it over the top, and that's what puts it away. So I'll talk a little bit about brails 4 and 5, which are usually handled by the professional crew member since they're under a lot more strain. We also have the small cleat up high, which is for our pennant, the Scotica flag way up high. But braille 5 is these 2 lines, braille 4 is this one up here, and when you give them a tug, you can see that they've got quite a bit of strain. Braille 5 has the big double block as well as 5 different parts of the main sheet going back towards the stern, so that's quite a bit of weight that just wants to pull the sail out even if there wasn't any wind blowing. So to make ready, the deckhand up here will be sure to drop the coil neatly on deck with the bitter ends on the bottom. So these being the bitter ends, we don't want those to get caught in the center and tie any knots. So do the same with this one. We'll check that these bitter ends are set down neatly on the bottom, nobody's standing on them. And then these brails get brought down to either 2 full turns or a turn and a half. So this is what 2 full turns look like. This is what a turn and a half looks like. Just so that you're ready to take an additional half turn off and ease when the time comes, but so that it doesn't ease or pay out too quickly. So I'll show you, especially with braille 5 here, I'm being very careful grabbing the next part so that I don't let it slip at all until it's time. And you can see how if I ease up just a little bit, the main is already setting itself. And if you turn around, you'll even see that the main sheet is drooping down. So that lower main sheet risks swinging around in the wind and knocking someone's hat off or so. So it's really important to keep those 2 full turns or that tension away from the cleat until you get the command to actually ease brails. And when you do get that command, the deckhand here is easing with that turn and a half while watching the main sheet to make sure it's not coming down too fast. Eventually, as the main sheet as the mainsail is almost fully set, you take that other half turn off, and then you cast off this brail completely so that the sail can get stretched out really nice and tight. If you accidentally ease too early, it is next to impossible to get the main sheet as taut as it was before. Here I am trying, but really it takes the captain actually casting it off the cleat to be able to get that as tight as it was before. So I'll talk a little bit about yard tackles, which are what we have rigged here to keep the yard from swinging unexpectedly. Often when we're sailing, we're easing out one side and taking up the slack on the other side, and then just making both sides fast or attaching them to the cleats so that the yard doesn't unexpectedly swing into somebody. So they're really just a safety feature. They probably didn't use tackles like this on historic Gundalows. So we coil this line to keep it off the deck at night and when we're doing deck washes, but anytime during the day when we're sailing, this should be neatly coiled and resting on deck so it's always ready to be used. You notice I set it down so that the bitter end is on the bottom and the line can pay out off the top neatly without fouling. I also want it to be in a spot where nobody will step on it. Using these tackles, right now there's not a huge amount of strain on here. It probably should have been left a little bit tighter, but I can see that I can take these turns off, being a little more careful as I get down to the last two turns, and then I could ease with this one full turn on it. If we were in the middle of a jibe with a lot of wind, I might be easing with a turn and a half on it with my hands back here, easing it out hand over hand. If there's very little wind and we're really trying to get the yard to swing further, I might be easing like this, really shaking some slack into it, again with my hands further back, just so that fingers never get pinched up against the cleat. So when you're trying to get yard tackles really tight, it helps to team up. What that means is that one person would be sweating a line by yanking on this part and then pulling down towards the block. The second person would be tailing the line, which is handling the cleat. So you have sweating and tailing. If you're alone, that's okay. You can often carefully do this and apply some pressure. That's called palming the line. Usually I'm actually using my thumb, not my palm, but applying some pressure in the center so that it doesn't slip back out. And that leaves it pretty nice and taut. So by palming here, that allows me to use this slack to get around the cleat. And I will do that 4 times for these. All of our other lines get 3 full turns, but the yard tackle we find needs 4, but no locking hitch. I want to say one more thing about what a fair lead is. So when you first are coming down to the cleat, I'll show you a couple of wrong or foul leads. This would be a foul lead if we came around that side first. You see how it comes under the horn of the cleat? So the next turn here is actually being pinched by the part that will be under strain. So the standing part here is pinching the working part that leads to the bitter end. So that's a foul lead. We don't want to rig it that way. Across the top first is also a foul lead, and you can kind of see that. But if I were to do this, again, it would get pinched under when this comes under strain and be very difficult to take off again. So there are basically 4 places to start, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and only one of them is right, which is to come this way and around so that your subsequent turns aren't being pinched. 3, so that's 3 turns now, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and here's my 4th full turn right there, and then I just leave a nice neat coil here for the next time it gets used. So we're going to demonstrate sweating and tailing a yard tackle. So first I'll take these turns down to where I have just one full turn on the cleat, so that's around both horns of the cleat, and now I'm ready. So go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to pull back, and then I'm going to pull down as Captain Matt pulls, and I'm making sure that my hands are at least a foot away from up here so that if he happens to release, my fingers don't get pinched up there.
And I'll say, I think that's all we're getting, so I'm making fast. And then I'll say, I have turns, you can let go. All right, I'm gonna show how we use dock line 2. At night, we like to do a locking hitch here, just for a little more security. So that's where this end is coming under here, but you can ask to be trained on that. Right now, it has a nice fair lead because the dock line's leading forward to a cleat on the dock. This one is called dock line number 2, by the way, because it's the second dock line that leaves the boat. So we have dock line 1 up there, number 2 here, 3 and 4 further aft by the stern. So just before leaving, we're going to switch the lead on this because to swing the stern out, we usually power ahead on dock line 2. And we need it to be a stern leading dock line to work the way we want it to, instead of a forward leading dock line. So we're not actually running the engine right now, we're not going to show that, but Mike, if you would switch that over to the other cleat, just so we can show what that looks like. So now you see how the lead comes around this side of this horn of the cleat first for a fair lead, and I'll be holding it with a turn and a half as it comes under strain until the command comes from the captain to take 2. So when I hear take 2, I shout it back, take 2. I quickly take turns off so that the mate on the dock can unhook. You can go ahead and do that, Mike. And I'll bring it right aboard, and he'll step aboard. All right, so I'm making line 3 ready to toss to the mate on the dock. So what that involves is bringing about half of it up and under all four lifelines, and then coiling, always coiling clockwise. Set this down for a moment. I'll put a single turn on here, and then I'll coil the remainder of it towards the bitter end, but then flipping it over so the bitter end is on the bottom. So the reason for that single turn on the cleat is when I throw it, I don't want a huge powerful throw to carry all the rest of the dock line overboard. So we're coming into the dock. There might be a bit of a gap, but the captain says send 3. Call back send 3, and I go towards the dock. Mike's already been able to get on the dock. He's gonna go for it. I don't stand back and admire my beautiful throw. I immediately, after throwing, go down and grab a hold of the dock line so that I can tend line 3. So tending it means pulling the slack out of it. And if we are still making forward movement here, I'm just gonna pay it right back out again because the captain hasn't said anything further. So tending the line just means I'm gonna let it out if it needs to go out. If there's a lot of slack in it, I'm going to pull it back in. When I hear the command to hold 3, here's where you don't have to worry so much about getting every last inch of it and palming carefully. It's more important a lot of the time that you just get turns on the cleat quickly and that you get a full turn and a half to hold the line like this. A lot of people here hold 3 and they think, well, I'm already holding it because they're holding onto the line. But without the turns on the cleat, you're really not going to have the muscle to fight, 40 tons of weight with the Gundalow still moving forward. So again, holding the line just looks like this, and standing back with your hands a foot or 2 away from the cleat.